Hello. I want to thank you for taking a little time out of your day to learn more about your STEM sports curriculum and the included resources. My name is Haley McLean, and I am the Education and Curriculum Specialist at STEM Sports. I've been working at STEM Sports since 2022. Prior to that, I taught 7th and 8th grade math for 7 years, 4 of which I also taught a STEM class where I used STEM Sports as my curriculum. Let's start with a little background about STEM sports. We believe the distinct combination of STEM and sports is a fundamental solution to meaningful learning that can last a lifetime. We provide standardized K-8 curricula that uses sports as the application to drive hands-on learning in classrooms, after-school programs, camps, and at homes across the globe. Our goal today is to provide you with an overview of our curriculum and resources so that you have the support and confidence to implement with your students. Prior knowledge of STEM and sports concepts are not a requisite to implement this curricula. All of our modules exercise the 5E instructional model with a 6th bonus E, providing a seamless approach for your instruction. For the purpose of this training, we are going to walk through the STEM Sports Baseball Manual. But regardless of the curriculum you have purchased, this training will guide you through your manual. You are welcome to follow along with this training, or if you have your manual handy, you can reference that as well. Let's get started by looking at page 2 and 3 of each of our manuals. You will see a Mindfulness Matters section. Mindfulness is essential to grasping the design and benefits of the STEM sports curriculum. We believe that it is essential to support our students so that they can develop skills that prepare them for a career in STEM and/or sports. The workforce is changing faster than ever, and it's essential that we provide the tools to our students so that they can change with it. Once you begin implementing STEM sports, you will see the increase in student interest and engagement that seamlessly prepares your students for their future. Moving on to pages 4 and 5 in your manual, you will see an overview of the 8 modules for grades 3 through 5. And if you flip the page, you will see the 8 modules for grades 6 through 8. This is where you want to start your planning process. You will notice for each module, it provides an overview of the objective, the concept, and the timing. You can plan your modules in a variety of ways. You can teach the modules in the order that they are provided, starting with 1 and going all the way to 8. You can also get with your professional learning communities and determine which modules should be taught in which order to support your district standards or independent school benchmarks. This curriculum is truly a great way to focus on your school and how you can support your student effort and achievement cross-curricular. As I mentioned, this is the baseball manual. So you'll notice all 8 modules are sport specific. However, if you're looking at one of our multi-sport manuals, you will see multiple sports throughout the modules. Another way to plan your instruction could be by sport. It really just comes down to developing a plan for what you and your students need. Our lessons provide an intuitive scope and sequence to simplify the planning process for you. One thing I also like to point out between the 2 pages of the grades 3 through 5 and the grades 6 through 8 is the ability that you have to support and/or enrich your learners based on their grade level. Typically, the modules align to one another. So notice in Module 1, the energy of baseball, for 3-5, you also have the Module 1, the forces in baseball for 6-8. You can almost think of these as a prerequisite to one another. As a 7th and 8th grade teacher, I was primarily using the 6 through 8 content. However, for some students, I found it helpful to have access to the 3-5 to provide that differentiation for my students. The same thing could be said about a 5th grader who needs enrichment. It's great to have this to have access to. On page 8 of your manual, you will see a supplies checklist and a materials needed page. The supplies checklist are all of the items that are included if you purchase the full kit. The image that you see accurately depicts what would be in those supplies. The materials needed are the items that you would need to provide. This page is essential for the purpose of planning and setting up your lesson. On page 9 of your manual, you will see the start of your glossary. This is where you will find all the vocabulary, diagrams, and formulas that you need for each module. The glossary will vary based on the sport manual that you purchased. Now, let's dive deeper into one of the modules. For the purpose of this training, I'm going to reference Module 4, grades 3 through 5, called The Art of Pitching. This is where you will get a more in-depth understanding of the module. You will see the same concept, objective, and timing that you saw on the table of contents. This is also where you will find the specific standards that each module covers. Our curriculum supports Next Generation Science Standard Connections, National Standards for K-12 Physical Education Connections, and Common Core Math Standards. Modules will always include at least 2 of the following standards, like you see in this example here. Sometimes you will also see a module that actually supports all 3. Through teaching this curriculum, I can confidently say that each curriculum not only meets the standards that are mentioned, but exceeds them. Another important feature here when going through your planning process is the supplies provided and materials needed portion. This is specific to this module so that you know exactly what supplies would be included in your kit and what materials you would need to make sure that you have ahead of time. Now, let's talk about some additional resources that you have access to. You will notice under the sequence of this lesson, it starts by saying to give your students a pre-assessment prior to engaging with the lesson. You can access the pre-assessment and key by following the link that's provided. You will get a copy of these results. Towards the end of the module, there will also be a post-assessment available. The pre and post assessment are the same questions, simply there to measure the student's pre and post knowledge of the subject matter. In addition to the assessments, you also have a variety of digital tools. These can be accessed by following this link. This link is also included inside the front cover of your manual. Let's talk about these digital tools. You have access to digital presentation decks. These presentation decks will guide you and your students through the 5E implementation process. There are 12 slides, and as you can see, these are a great tool to use as a visual and/or talking point throughout the module. These can be used in the classroom or in a remote setting. As we dive deeper into this module, you will see how this correlates to the module. You have access to 2 digital worksheets. The first allows you to edit the worksheet based on your lesson plan and to meet the needs of your students. These can be printed and/or shared with your students. The second is a great option if your students have access to a computer. It is a digital PDF that you can share with your students so that they can input their data directly into the worksheet. They can also input a variety of answers and diagrams and turn it into you digitally. Lastly, you also have access to the worksheet keys for each of the modules. These worksheet keys are great to model for the instructor the format and the calculations of each module. Now that you know all of the resources you have access to, let's pick back up in the lesson sequence. Prior to teaching, it's important to read through the module in all 5 E's to get a better understanding of how long each E will take, where you might want to stop after day 1, where you might want to pick up after day 2, those types of planning things. As you prepare, it's important to note that all of the E's can be shortened or extended based on your class of students. The 5E process is there to guide the instructor and help with the ease of implementation. The 5 E's are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate, and our bonus 6th E of extend. You are welcome to read the specifics of the E's for this module or the one that you're referencing of your own. In the interest of time, I'm just going to give a general overview of the E's and their timing. Starting with engage. Engage typically poses an open-ended question or two to generate student curiosity and engagement. There are no right or wrong answers during this time, but it is encouraged to challenge responses to get students mindful of connecting those dots between STEM concepts and the sport. Engage typically takes around 5 to 10 minutes. Explore, often but not always, is the portion that segues into the physical engagement of the lesson. Notice in this specific module, students are asked to reference the images. These are the images that you would find in that digital presentation deck. Then the students are prompted to conduct an informal experiment. If it is a physical engagement activity, it can take around 30 to 40 minutes to complete. Other times, physical engagement is not introduced yet, and the students may be prompted to have informal discussions. If that's the case, this portion takes around 15 minutes. Explain is where the instructor does the majority of their teaching. Previous to this, you are encouraging students to independently investigate and discover the lesson concepts, wherever that may take them. It's important as the instructor to reflect on the student outcomes from the previous two E's and use that knowledge to guide your instruction accordingly. You will notice this section references key vocabulary that can be found in the glossary that I showed you earlier. Other times in Explain, it may reference a graphic, a diagram, or even model an equation. This portion typically takes around 10 minutes, and in my experience, this is more often than not where I would pause after day 1. To start day 2, I typically revisit this explain portion, but I have my students lead the conversation. The next E of elaborate. At this point, you've engaged your students in thinking, allowed them to explore their ideas, and given them the essential information for this module. Now is the time to allow students to revisit and reshape their original thoughts by conducting formal experiments. This is generally done through physical literacy. In my experience, establishing group roles, expectations, and duties in this E specifically is crucial to creating a collaborative learning environment. You'll actually notice for this example, we lay out a list of duties and suggestions that you can use with your students. These teacher notes come from our curriculum team and our pilot program. The elaborate portion typically takes around 30 minutes to complete. The next E, evaluate. This is where your students connect the dots between STEM concepts learned through the application of the sport. This portion will connect to the lesson objective and the standard. For instance, in this module, students are asked to create a force diagram to indicate the balanced and unbalanced forces when pitching a ball. This is also a great time to formally assess your students with the post-assessment so that they can demonstrate their knowledge on the subject matter. This portion typically takes around 20 to 30 minutes, depending on if you include the post-assessment or not. Now to the sixth and final E of extend. This is the challenge E in the sequence. This is an opportunity to take the module to the next grade level by challenging your students. This is great to be used as an in-class enrichment or even an at-home opportunity. You'll also notice in each of our modules, there's always going to be 5 to 6 STEM jobs in sports. These will always relate to the module. The specific concepts and skills that the students learned will directly correlate to these jobs. This really attributes to the mindfulness we talked about earlier, as it aligns with our mission and vision at STEM Sports. We want students to see why they are learning this and when they will use it in real life to be empowered for their future endeavors. This portion was one of my personal favorites. I found it really prompted great conversation and curiosity with my students. We also include a fun fact within each module. I personally like to show this towards the beginning of the lesson to really prompt the students and really pique that curiosity and engagement. My students also really enjoyed finding fun facts of their own at the end of the module. If you go ahead and turn to the next page, you will see another worksheet option. If you have no edits and digital sharing is not required, you can always just print these worksheets for your students. It is also just helpful to have the worksheet as a reference for the instructor. Let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about our capstone. This is designed for the 6th through 8th grade students. It's an opportunity for students to commensurate their knowledge from the entire curriculum through project-based learning. This does not mean you have to teach all 8 modules before completing the capstone. These projects require collaboration, critical thinking, and problem solving through the exploration of the resources that are provided. You will see the capstone follows this same format as the modules by including the objective, the standards, supplies provided, materials needed, and that same 5E with the bonus E, of course, sequence. One difference you will notice is that there's actually no timing on the capstone. This is because it's project-based, and you as the instructor can set it up so it takes as little as 2 hours or as many as 8 hours. This is also an example of the additional resources that we provide on the capstone project. In this capstone, it walks you through a baseball game simulation to evaluate the best baseball players statistically using qualitative data. The qualitative data is an extensive list of players that's included for your students to reference in order for them to be successful during this capstone. I really hope that this walkthrough helped you and gives you the confidence to implement STEM sports regardless of your role and expertise. If you have any questions or if there's anything that we can do at STEM Sports to support you along the way, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or to Sean Barton, our Chief Value Officer. I also just want to say thank you for playing a role in the education of our future leaders. I truly hope that you have fun implementing STEM sports. I know that I did.